of vintage audio restoration begins today. You know, I've been looking forward to this for a lot of months. Many of you who are new to the channel may not realize that one of my big passions in life is fixing things, be they vintage mechanical systems or vintage electrical systems. I have a business that's called Cal Vintage Repair. And over the years, I've repaired a lot of different products for people, old mechanical systems as well as electrical systems. There aren't many people left in the U.S. today that work on tube amplifiers and tube systems. And as I'll explain to you a little while in this introductory video, I get shipped stuff from all over the place in various states of disrepair and havoc. Sometimes I can make it like new, sometimes I can't. Well, the last project we left off on was the restoration. We were just about halfway through the restoration of a beautiful 1968 Magnavox Astrosonic stereo console. A beautiful maple piece, and it's going to be lovely, and it's going to be destined for the Shine Shack. This was bought several years ago for $50. My friend Bobby, who has a big pickup truck, we loaded it up at that time. A local place popped it in, came with a lot of records. I was very lucky to get an enormous record collection and, well, have a chance to do a thorough restoration on this beast. The last video we did of the 2018 in the early spring, early to mid-spring, we got the electronics working, which you just heard here today. And before we go any further, let's backtrack and see what we're working on right now, okay? I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you are along for vintage audio restoration. We also do, don't forget, vintage audio listening experience too on the fabled Wall of Sound. My custom built rack of vintage stereos, vintage audio, high fidelity, spanning from 1958 to about 1978. It's a really wonderful wall of sound, and anytime I do a restoration project, I'd like to put it on the wall of sound proudly and get it ready to display, because one time, sometime in the future, I don't know whether it'll be in 2019 or 2029, but I sure hope one day to dim all the lights and turn on all of those vintage stereos up there and have all those beautiful face plates lit up with their bright lights and just be a spectacular scene here on the Rancho. In the meantime, though, we've got work to do. We've got to finish restoring this Magnavox console and get it out to the Shine Shack. Okay? Our lady cave out there. Great to have you along. This is our lovely Astrosonic, and it is really it's really in outstanding condition. It is made by Magnavox. As I mentioned, you can see the badging down here, and it has a little pilot light that lights up down there too when the unit is running. It has that colonial maple, and these things are legendary for the quality of their sound. It has a record storage area here, and it has a place where you can add external speakers. You have a specific knob there to do that. There's a lot of records that were included here, a lot more in the house, tons of 45s. We had some fun when I first got it. We did a couple listening experiences. You know, it was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. But we want to make it as good as it can be. It's had everything included from Al Jolson, Jackie Wilson, a lot of early blues and Motown. Kind of excited to have that, huh? So it's got the record storage area that has all the original stuff too. It came with the unit, the original owner's manual here. Look at this, huh? How nice is that to have the original owner's manual? And over on this side, let me close these nice, got these nice sliding tops. It's got a beautiful Micromatic record player system here. Magnavox Micromatic, which is legendary. This was probably built, the record player part was built up in Michigan by Voice of Music, who built most of the many, if not you know, the overwhelming majority of record players that went into, say, General Electrics, Zeniths, Magnavoxes, Motorola's, the nicer units. Well, it's not in the best shape of all, as you can see. The faceplate is scored here pretty badly. There are still, it's not easy, but I do have sourcing to get parts, so we have some work to do in terms not only of the electronic restoration, but also the physical restoration too. And we need to address the speaker system and make sure that that's working great too. So we kind of got our work cut out for us here in restoration. The restoration project, of course, always begins with the electronics, because if you can't get the guts of it working, there's no point doing anything else on the unit. And that's the bottom line. This is a nice unit. It has the AFC, the automatic frequency control, which means rather than have stations tune in and then you go between stations and you have a ton of static, this takes you seamlessly between stations, so you don't have any static in that mode. So every movement of the dial is bringing in a station clearly, as opposed to hearing static before. Of course, that has less discrimination, so it doesn't pick up as many signals. But these things are very good at acquiring signals. I have external antennas just set up here, just hanging here in the shop. Yeah, like a little collar in here too. You can see the tuning, the tuner gang here, which is very nice. Okay, there's our output transistors. This is not tube. This is solid state. This is still relatively early solid state. So I think it happens to sound pretty good. We get the antenna hooked up here. I've had the sound up before. A lot of work to get this thing going again. Now I'm using Bose speakers here. These are going to be much nicer over here in the unit. Very powerful, so it's very easy to overdrive these smaller speakers. I'm going seamlessly between stations here.
Casino. Register at northbayjobfair.com. Tickets are on sale now for the Reckless new on Alice 97.3. It's a brand new world. I got a brand new heart.
It's got a lot of bass to it, much too much bass for these little shelf top speakers from Bose, but nice. Turn that down a bit and have a little talk here. You know, Magnavox was started in California, and it comes from the Latin magna, meaning large, and vox meaning voice. And I guess in the whole scheme of stereo consoles, and there were many made, from Silvertones, from Sears, Montgomery Wards, there were Sylvania, there were a lot of different ones. But the top of the line ones tended to be the Motorola, the Magnavoxes, and the Zeniths, and to some extent the Curtis Mathis. Now that name may ring a bell to you. And of course, Curtis Mathis was one of those sort of reverse, what would you say, reverse television and radio companies they really started in furniture and then decided to integrate forward and start putting electronics in there, taking fine furniture in Texas and then incorporating electronics. You may remember their tagline, something like "It's expensive" or something. It's you know, lasts forever. I can't. Somebody will put in a comment section down below the old tagline for Magnavox, you know, buy it once or something like that, expensive but good quality. Well, at the top of the heap was definitely Motorola, but you also had Zenith. You had Zenith to a great extent. Zenith always built great quality stuff. And then the Magnavox. So the Magnavox stands for large voice, and they really are premium units. They commanded higher figures in the marketplace. We can go ahead and look at the little service, the book that you get with it when you purchase one. It can be kind of interesting. Now, why do I have this unit out, though? Why have I taken this electronics that's totally complete now and pulled it out again? Well, because a friend of mine did a video today, Shango066. He's one of a small core of rebuilders out there that really enjoy getting their, well, he's like me, we enjoy getting our teeth into projects. He does a lot more TV. He does radio too, but I think his first passion is television. And, you know, he's a much higher skill set than I am. Very excellent guy and a decent guy too, and kind of has a lot of irony and a lot of sarcasm with what he does, but it's good stuff. He's restoring, or somebody sent in a Astrosonic. It was about 5 years earlier. This is a 1968. It was about 5 years earlier than this unit. And he was talking about some of these capacitors, which are like little temporary storage devices that store and charge and then release it, causing oscillation. You know, okay, depending on the, I'm not going to get all complicated, but depending on the capacitance of it, it charges and discharges. Okay, some are at a very fast rate and some are at a very low rate. But they have the distinction of capacitors also in a signal path. They block direct current and they allow it to pass through alternating current, which is what you hear in a voice. We don't speak on a monotone all the way through. Our voices modulate, okay? So capacitors help to block some of the DC and allow the modulated sound that you hear to come through. So I was a little concerned today because he said some of the capacitors on this unit, he said the Nichicons of that era were kind of junk that went into these units. So I wanted to bring this back in today and do a little testing on my own set. This uses Nichicon, which stands for Nippon Chemical company in Japan, and they've been making very fine capacitors for years. So a lot of us, I think, were really kind of taken back when he said that you know, there's two types of capacitors. There's the one that sits upright that looks like the can, you know, and then there's the ones that lay flat, well, with the leads coming at the side. He said, well, all the ones that sit upright tested good, and all the ones that sit flat down with the leads coming out the ends of and the barrel tested bad. Well, I was concerned. I wanted to come in and do some testing on my own unit, and well, lo and behold, they turned out to be fine. Probably years later, you know, it can be some years you have a problem with some capacitors, and that's just the way it is. But generally, I was kind of surprised because Nichicon is always pretty good quality stuff for capacitors. So a lot of you will be wondering, what the devil is this chick talking about? Well, it's something, one of my passions is rebuilding, and I've done it for a lot of years, and I get to ship things to work on, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because a lot of people ship me things to work on. And yeah, I've worked down on the backlog a lot. I've reduced it about 80%, but packaging is a really critical, and it's a terrible issue when people send these things. They're heavy. This isn't as heavy as some of the tube stuff, but you can imagine the way it gets damaged in transit. So yeah, I wanted to bring this out and do a little testing. I'm not going to get into the testing I did. We'll do that on other units that we scratch repair. But we still got a long way to go. We got to get on the physical aspects of restoring this. We got to make sure that the speakers are doing good. We got to make sure the alignment on the radio is decent. Then we're going to put it all together, give it a real nice polish up, and we're going to do some listening, and we're going to stick it into the shine jack there. So, yeah, just wanted to give it a little test today and figure that out. So let's take a couple minutes and look at, if you bought this in 1968, what did you get with it? Let's take a look at that. We're back here again now, and this is the original operating instructions for the stereophonic high fidelity. And believe me, this was really quite. It was still, stereo was still fairly new, especially broadcast stereo. Remember, before that, you could only get a mono signal in. You didn't have two different channels. You just had one basic channel coming in. High fidelity came in as a way to expand the frequencies that you would hear and have a much broader listening experience. As opposed to having very compressed sound, they tried to widen it out so you would have the highs and more lows for a better listening experience. When stereo came in, it was a whole new ball game. It was a whole new thing. And these units actually had to be sold in stores, meaning that when you went into, when you were thinking about a stereo console, you went either into a high-end department store, which a lot of these were sold, or you went to a standalone Magnavox store, and they would have separate rooms where you could listen to stereophonic equipment. Now, believe me, it had to be sold. They would give you headphones, or they'd sit you down in a chair in front of one of these, and they would put the music on, and they would show you what it meant to have stereo with a different sound coming out of the left channel than on the right channel. So it was definitely something that did not just automatically catch fire and go. It required quite a bit of selling. And back on some of my videos, you can look in some of, like Packard Bell, they would have stereophonic listening records that they would use in the shop, and you would have wide separation. I'm not going to get into why today's music's a ripoff, or why the current push in music is to push back to single channel and do away with stereo because of the cost involved in producing multiple channels. And they also figure people aren't listening on high fidelity devices anymore. They're listening on cell phones with earbuds. And that's all fine, well and good. But I, for one, will regret the passing of the stereophonic sound if it does come to pass. Well, enough of babbling for me. We look at the manual here. And here, this person was careful enough to put the model number out there. They wrote it down over here. Give you a nice welcome to the Magnavox family. And these were the days when you didn't have to have something that was downloaded on a computer. You actually had something you could sit down and hold in your hand. Read terminals for putting external speakers. Yeah, designed for true stereo separation. This is an important thing. They called it, some people criticized it because the sound was so different from the right channel and the left channel. They would call it ping-ponging back and forth. But it was still so much better than you get today. Gave you a 5-year warranty. Showed you the controls. Stereo phono. Stereo FM. Lights up when you've achieved stereo. This is the AFC, what I was telling you about before. Ensures proper tuning and eliminates distortion caused by inaccurate tuning. It automatically, in just pushing it close to the station, it automatically locks that station in for you. This thing could also be driven. You could use it as an amplifier if you had a tape, reel-to-reel tape player or anything like that. Okay. Kind of a nice little booklet that they gave you. And this is one of the nice features, and it makes it a much more valuable unit. Anything that is original from the era, as opposed to reproduction stuff, always adds value. And so I was very lucky. Putting your 45, selecting your speakers, how you set up, and we saw that right under here with that control. We'll get into that in future as we're working on. So it's a lot of fun to do these restorations. Magnavox was about as good as it got. Let me tell you, they were a very, very, very great company founded in California. As you can see, they eventually moved out to Indiana, to Fort Wayne. So when you had one of these units, not only did you have something that was sounded good, as Magnavoxes always did, but you had something that looked beautiful too. So it was a combination of cabinetry, really nice woods. These aren't veneers; these are real solid rock maple here on these. So the really incredible thing is these things can be had for a song today, which is really quite remarkable when you think about the quality that you get, and you think about you have something in your home that is a real talking item as well as a thing of beauty, as opposed to the black boxes they sell at Best Buy and places like that. If you want to see me doing an actual vintage rescue where I went out and grabbed our Motorola that's in the living room, you can just put Motorola in the video search box, and you can see a vintage audio rescue when we went out and saved the unit. This one is also in there too. If you put Magnavox in the search box, you can see when we went out with the truck and picked it up. Let's talk a little bit about shipping. Many people over the years have sent things in to be repaired, and some of the things that they send in are irreplaceable units. They're vintage audio history. They're American-made stuff from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right up until probably 1975. Great quality stuff, but they don't take time to properly package that. And the real sad thing is, there's churches and places, because I'm one of the last people that does, and I only put about 25% of what I do in the way of rebuilding on YouTube, because I don't have time a lot of times to go through and talk about every step, and not everything is exciting and interesting when you're doing that. But I get a lot of packages in here from people. Oh, I inherited this from my grandpa, blah, 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 and I would like to see if this can be fixed. I have had churches contact me. They have organs in their churches that are built in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. They don't use wind and pipes. They use electronic amplifiers, tube amplifiers, to reproduce and make the sounds that you hear in church. So when these go bad, it's not like you just open the yellow pages and look up a radio repair guy to come to do that, because baby, they're all gone. I bought out a lot of stuff from their shops and stuff to fit out my own shops. So over time, it's a small community, and people get known in the community, and people send me things to be fixed. There's a church up in the northeast in New England that has an organ in the church, and it's malfunctioned. So they went ahead and somebody pulled the amplifier out of the organ, and they sent it to me here. The problem is that the packaging was very poor, as I'll show you guys in a minute. The general rule is you have to package stuff as if it's going to be dropped from 6 feet in the air. Straight dead drop. And some of this stuff weighs 50, 60, 70 pounds. Some of these Baldwin amplifiers with the big 6L6 tube can weigh up to 70 pounds per unit. And when you're packing it with stuff this thin in the way of styrofoam, it's a hopeless thing. And what actually ends up happening is you're destroying pieces of Americana because you're not taking the time to ship stuff properly. Let's see what happens when you don't ship stuff the right way. This came to me. It's a Leslie 102 tube amplifier here, and like I say, it came out of a church organ. And Leslie, of course, is legendary. People knock themselves out to get these to convert into guitar amplifiers. Leslie is a very famous, high quality name. Have all their own components stamped on there. Okay, great units. If you can get these things working and gone good, these things command hundreds and hundreds of dollars in the marketplace. Okay, the problem is, and you can see some of the bend, like I said, if you're just throwing that in a box like this and putting that on top and shipping it, well, here's what happens. Take a second to see if we can lift this up. Let's look at the bottom side here. Okay. You have 4 different, these are the early days of printed circuit boards, very early days. Everything before that was point-to-point type of wiring. As we go down here, board number 1 is okay, board number 2. Look at board number 3. Board number 3 is smashed to smithereens, dislocated here. All the traces here are wrecked. Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. Now, you say to yourself, well, Rosie, you could probably go out and get one of those boards. Yeah, I might be able to. I might be able to point-to-point wire it. But does the church want to pay $1,000 for that? That's the issue. See all the smashed down tube sockets, all at different heights. It's a crime. So if you have something that you want to have repaired or have something that you want to look at, the rule is contact me first, and then make sure you're prepared to pack that as if it's going to drop from a height of 6 feet on a dead drop. Because I'll tell you, in my world, with this beautiful Leslie 102 amplifier, which is legendary, it's a crime what happened here. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this yet. To trace out and make a new board, I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Point-to-point wire. My inclination is just, and I've already contacted him, show him, because I always take video when things are unpacked. Okay, so I protect myself. But I just don't know, at the end of the day, if it's economically feasible to do it. So I'm still waiting to hear from them. Okay? That's the real horror of vintage audio restoration work. Okay? Let's wrap up today's video. Like any community on YouTube, the vintage audio and television restoration channels and that area community, well, it's a small community. It's a very tight-knit community. It's guys with tremendous skill sets in there, okay? There's people that can really help out and really give you a lot of interesting stuff. They take Shango, takes old roundy tube TVs and gets them fired up and running again. There's got the guys, Radio Phono Nut down in Alabama, a couple of these guys down south. They do very great work and stuff. And I like to think I uphold that tradition here in California on the West Coast. You can go down to my playlist. You can see an overview of my whole vintage audio collection when I stand there and go over the whole collection and tell you all the pieces that I have. But once again, if you're interested in having something restored, remember, you're really holding a treasure that's very hard to restore. It's not something that we can go out and just grab parts for. Yeah, we can fake it. We can make a newy circuit board. But you know what? It's never going to have the value that the original has. And it's also a community where we listen to other people and we value what they have to say. For example, when my friend Shango, who I follow, started mentioning about the capacitors in the Astrosonic that he just restored, I was driven to come out here and check the ones on my Astrosonic to say, gee, these Nichicons are usually pretty good quality stuff. I better be sure, because he mentioned that. Okay? So that's the kind of fun we have in vintage audio restoration. So what is on the plate for next? We're going to start reinstalling the electronics here and get it back inside of the Magnavox unit. We're also going to test out the speaker system. We're going to try to lubricate the record player and check that out too. That's not my forte. When I restored the Motorola inside the 1961 Motorola 21-tube 3-channel stereo console, I pulled that record player, that beautiful Motorola Voice of Music record player, and I shipped that off to a follow-on group of people that used to work for them in the days when they produced those record players, and left it in their hands to get that thing working like new, and they did a wonderful job. Sometimes you got to realize that you can't do everything. Well, it's been a long video, but it's a good kickoff video for the 2018-2019 season. We're going to have a lot of projects coming up, a lot of fun stuff to do. I want to thank you for being along today. Your thumbs up are most appreciated, and yeah, I hope you enjoy vintage audio and TV too. Thanks, everybody.